What is going on, y'all? Thomas Chang here, and I was gonna give y'all a cleaner idea and a better idea of what had happened with my dad and I on the morning of December 10th, 2016. The week before, my dad drove up to the ranch, and he was sitting in the condo blind that we got. It's a big blind. It produces a lot of deer through that feeder that's there. And so he drove up there just to shoot a doe to put some meat in the freezer. And so he was sitting in there early morning, and sure enough, a nice buck, showed up, and he didn't want to take the risk of scaring it off for me because he wanted me to shoot that buck. It stepped out about 20 yards in front of him, and it was a big bodied deer. He estimated it to be around 140, 150 in the pound range. So we didn't know what his rack looked like, but all we knew that he was in the rut and he was ready to fight. So next week of December 10th, we drove down to the ranch, and that Friday we got there for an afternoon hunt, and nothing came. Feeder went off, a couple does came in, but all we could see was a cow in the alleyway 150 yards away, and so we didn't want to risk a shot at shooting a cow or anything, so we packed up and left. Next morning around 5:30 we headed to the blind. We got in, settled in, and opened the windows up. Pretty foggy outside, cold, crisp morning, any December morning really, but back then. So we settled in, we got ready, got my rifle in, and 308, and so we had a few glimpses of deer as the feeder was about to go off, and we saw a big bodied deer around the feed pin that we have, and so we thought, oh, it's probably a pretty nice deer and a pretty nice buck, so we just weren't sure enough to take that shot because we couldn't see as clearly as we wanted to. So as soon as the feeder went off, my dad had recently downloaded a deer call app on his phone, and I'll tell you, it worked. So a couple minutes after the feeder went off, about 10 to 15 does were in the feed pen with the little small bucks around and everything. So sure enough, my dad presses the buck grunt, and this buck from about 200 yards comes out in the fog, and it was majestic looking, honestly, and it looked like a ghost coming out from the alleyway that you would never see before. It's so quiet back there, but he was ready for a fight. He heard that buck grunt, and he was pissed. So about 200 yards away, he comes in behind. We have a brush pile behind our feeder, and so he makes a hit line around the brush pile, and he was gonna go up towards the house, and whereas there is another feeder and a lot of big bucks go to, but we wanted him to not go there. So my dad pressed the buck grunt again, and sure enough, he came in between the post and some mesquite trees. He almost ran over a doe, he ran over a doe just to get to us, and so I was shaking in my seat and with the crosshairs on him, and he was coming towards our blind. Sure enough, my dad was quiet and I was shaking. My dad didn't say anything because he had taught me what to do if you do not get a broadside shot. Go down the brisket to his chest, choose either left or right, and take your shot. Sure enough, I did. I lined it up on his right side and squeezed the trigger. Boom. Sure enough, he turned around 180 in his footsteps and ran. He buckled twice from what my dad had said, and so I thought I had put a good shot on him. All I got was wide out from the smoke of the barrel. So I was all shaking and everything, and my dad and I were smile to our ears, honestly, and I kept asking, did I get a good shot? Did I do this right? And I mean, the results show with the 308, I hit him on his right side. He broke his left shoulder. He was down. He didn't go about 20 yards, and so we got out of the blind, all excited. I mean, I couldn't really wait 30 minutes. I mean, that's what the rule they say, or everybody says, is wait 30 minutes. But my dad knew that I put a good shot on him. He buckled twice, and he was favoring, like, he was going down like that, and it was just an awesome experience for me, and I mean, it's a crazy experience if you think about it, and I think honestly you you have to have been there. It was just something that I'll never forget, shooting this buck. He's a very nice buck. He was probably the biggest buck that I've shot body-wise. He weighed about 150, 160, and he was definitely in the middle of the rut, and he was pissed at us, and I'm sure the 308 did its job. So that's a story of my buck on December 10th, 2016. Thank you all.